Alright, generals. Sorry for the late delays in getting this one up. YouTube decided to screw with me, so there was a lot of errors and issues and stuff I had to get done with. So thankfully it's all on the way, so it should be all loaded up and ready for you today. So I'm going to cover a couple of things for you. First things first, though. One thing we need to be aware of is actually a command range. It's actually come up a few times here, and I want to show it to you here. I'm going to show every army basically is dealing with this in some way right now. One thing to remember is if you look at this screen, this is when I put on the extra information mode, and I put on like the HQ range. You'll see that I'm clicked on 4th Panzer Group's HQ. The green here, this is 2 hexes in any direction, so 1, 2, 1, 2, etc. That's the best command range. They actually get some bonuses for being this close to the HQ. A little bit of micromanagement kind of helps. It's a good thing. The light blue here is the range at which you can still operate at maximum efficiency. Red, however, is not. Red basically is a warning. Now you can see right here that the 4th Panzer Group, like red is emergency distance, right? Last turn, every army kind of had this issue, so I'm going to go over it with each group, but I'll start here with the Army Group North. 4th Panzer Group was able to blitz to the town here with these divisions, and then the orders were to kind of use these divisions to help move up to take Jacobstadt. However, the problem facing 4th Panzer Group is twofold. One, these forward units that had blitzed ahead and seized the town and took the bridges intact, good move. Problem was, A, they were out of command range. Now, when a unit is out of command range, it actually gets some big negatives, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. The second thing is during that turn, they were actually still changing their position from blitzkrieg to sustained offensive in an effort to save on fuel. That meant that these units, even the ones back here, back towards the German lines, had their APs cut drastically. The ones that were over here had basically nothing they could do. They couldn't even move. There was no option for them. They were out of command range and changing their formation. So they basically sat around and didn't do much at all while the foot infantry kind of moved up to catch up. It's not terribly a bad thing because now you've got almost 7,000 fuel for Army Group North. But just remember that you basically want to make sure your HQ is always within 3 of your units, and if it goes outside of that, you're going to suffer. Now, for 4th Panzer Group here, they're in a pretty good position. You can see the Totenkopf group here was in the red, so it's still kind of giving orders, so it's still within range. But this is one of the reasons why you don't have to worry too much about telling me where to put your HQ units. I will always try and move your HQ units into the best position to cover all your units. But just be aware that you can't have, a unit 6 over here and then 6 over here and expect them to actually be able to do anything. I'm going to go down south here because there's been a few examples of this. Here's one that I'll show you here. Is right now both the 4th Army and the 2nd Panzer Group have been sending units along this southern railroad through the swamps. The problem here is these units are at the limits of their range. You can see right here, 2nd Panzer Group. You got the red here, that's the limit. All right. 4th Army was moved here to kind of keep them in range. But they're definitely at the limits of what they can go to. And you don't want to, you want to make sure that, like, for instance, if 4th Army was up here near Minsk, and these guys were out of the red, out of the emergency, that's a no good. So you can see here, you've got the 3 range for comfortable. You got the 2 extra for emergency. That means a 5 hex maximum range. 6th Army, again, good units out here. It works well. But 1st Panzer Group, you can see right here, it's back here before Lvov, right? Now look at the 13th and the 11th Panzer up here. These guys are totally out of the range. They're even out of the emergency red zone. And by the way, ignore the little clicking noises you might hear in the background. That is my dog trying to beg for more attention after I just took her out for 2 long walks. So you've got the 11th and 13th Panzer. All right. Now, if you can see right here next to their position, they're postured for blitzkrieg. This is the warning out of command range. It's more than 5 hexes from its HQ. This results in a number of penalties, information valid for the start of the turn. So it always checks for command range at the start of the turn. It doesn't matter. You can go beyond the command range during a turn, as long as at the end of the turn, they're brought back within. But this means right now is, if you look at these Panzer units, they have an action point pool of just 30. That's enough to launch one attack, or to move basically one hex. So these units, these two Panzer divisions, which helped take Rovno, and we're basically here at the beginning of the last turn, didn't do anything. They're not going to do anything much for this turn. The best bet is probably going to be to move them south and move them back in. Some of these units have been struck by the lack of supplies and things now that we're moving things around, but it's just something to be aware of. So you can see here, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes is your max range. If you're within the lightly colored areas here, that's where you get some bonuses. So it's actually good to have the HQ near where you're going to attack, which is something that if you give me orders about where you're going to attack, where you're going to launch the offensive, and I can kind of see where your units are going to be deployed, I'll move the HQ to make sure you get that bonus. Don't worry. I mean, you can always remind me if you want to. That's never a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of. But just that range at 5 hex max, it's a hard max. Once you go beyond that 6 hexes, it's the same bonus as if you were 60 hexes. So since everyone's moving this way anyway, towards the east, these guys will be brought in line, but it's something to be aware of. And because we're moving the forward supply base to Lvov, it's not actually that big of a loss because you only have 700 fuel anyway. So I would recommend this turn just moving the 1st Panzer Group HQ like within range of these units, moving it just down the railroads just to make sure everyone's happy and in range, and that'd be it. You're not going to be able to move any of your Panzer divisions for the next probably 2 turns anyway. At least the next turn while everything resets. Same thing I believe will go down here. You can see the range is good for these, but look at the 11th Army. Following those orders with the 11th Army, the 8th Infantry Division up here, which is way up north, which was used to help put, move up towards these lines but not attack, is out of range. Now, the action points pool is actually bigger for it. It's actually in a decent position because it's foot infantry, and foot infantry are just a little bit more durable towards these sort of things. Panzers and motorized need a little bit more micromanagement, I guess. But it's just something to be aware of. This guy has some penalties, so he's not going to be as good as he might have been. So it's just something to be aware of, is make sure that you're aware that you can only have within 5 hexes. Now, what I'll try and do is, I try and put the commander within range to cover everything. I'll stick with orders if they're given explicitly, except I might tweak them a little bit in case it's like, oh, you're 1 hex away. Normally, HQ placement is more about just blanket covering everything than any specific location. And the AI isn't, suicidal with its units. That's the one good thing about this, is that the AI doesn't play like a human. So the AI doesn't sacrifice, let's say, a random infantry division just trying to take out a lone HQ. Hey, calm down. She hears me talking, she gets excited. So anyway, that's the situation it is right now. The other thing is, just remember your decisions for when you did the fuel supplies and everything. If you look at the reports that I posted, there should be things about the logistics situations, about trains getting repaired, that sort of thing. Yeah. One thing also to be on the lookout before I get into the details for everybody is relationships. All right. First thing, von Brachtisch, we are at -12. That's bad. Again, he's actually fairly powerful. He's one of the guys we definitely want to appeal and make on our side. Hitler likes us okay, but he's not going to give us anything for winter, so that's bad. We've kind of pissed off Goering this turn. The last 2 turns, we've kind of done a lot to step on his toes, so he doesn't like us very much. Good news is that I'm on good relations with all of my commanders here, except for von Rundstedt. Now, Army Group South, this is important for you. Because it's a -3 that I have with you in our relationship, that means your Panzer Group right now doesn't have a focus. Right? You do not have the focus for Army Group South. So that means your Panzer Group doesn't get the a focus on it, and that also means that your Panzer Group doesn't get the little officer cards to play. The ones that you see right here, beneath the picture, there's no cards. But if I go up toward, let's see, is it 2nd Panzer Group? 2nd Panzer Group has these cards here. And if you check the previous reports about what cards have been played on the previous turns, you'll see which card is actually in play for each group. But that just means that your decisions in the future, you might have to make the decision you might not like to increase von Rundstedt's relationship with me as his commander. Because while I might be in a good relationship with you guys, in the game turns, I've kind of done a few things he doesn't like, so he's not going to give a focus for them. So in the meantime, if you want, Army Group South, you can ask for me to give the focus to somebody else, to another army in the meantime. However, it does cost 5 political points, so it's something that you have to kind of justify. Other things. The last 2 really important officers. Gerka, in charge of the trains, absolutely loves us. Look at this. Our decisions are adjusted by -2 political points, and siege artillery is not going to be delayed. Now, Army Group North, Exorcist did request the siege artillery, which is moving up here, but it's going to be a little slow for a while. It's the trains are still slowly getting converted, that sort of thing. It'll get there eventually, though, so don't worry. If someone else really needs it to take out a city, definitely argue for it down below. We can always switch it around. Because he likes us so much, that -50% of delays is incredible. In one of my previous games, the trains hated me as a player, and the delay was so high, the siege artillery never left Warsaw. So it's he can be kind of petty sometimes. The downside is General Wagner, who's in charge of the trucks, because the Wehrmacht's logistics arm is a mess, doesn't like us. Now, this is what's important about this. Look at these negatives. Negative relationship, -11. So that increased political point cost by 1, which almost is offset by Gerka's trains. Transport action card cost +1. And the card is something that ties back into our previous decision. I'll go over it in a second, actually. But the other one here is right in the middle. Maximum fuel stockpile size for Panzer Group HQs is less 10,000 barrels. Simply put, he doesn't like us. He's throwing a bit of a fit, or he doesn't want to do his job as well because he thinks that we're sabotaging him. And that means you guys have less fuel on hand. The way to offset that is you got to make truck guy happy. The way to make him happy may be at the expense of trains. There might be some decisions coming up in the future where you might say, oh, the trains are the best option. It might be better to snub Gerka here because he likes us so much, and kind of throw Wagner a bone to kind of bring him on our side. This also means that if you get decisions about, say, captured trucks, it might be better to hand over those trucks to Wagner to improve it for everybody. However, again, because this is a game about relationships, and I highly recommend playing it solo sometime, it's very good. Because in this game, you're not just a commander, you also are more like a manager. The relationships between my field commanders, +11 with Lieb and +10 with Bach here, that's decent. But if I were to, say, start favoring Wagner to try and make him on my side, these generals or field marshals will start getting blows to their relationship with me, and that could then come back and bite me in the ass, because all of a sudden they don't get focuses. So there's a real balancing act going on. The second thing is, actually third, I should say, is tying back into this transport action card, which actually then goes back into our whole thing about being out of range and out of supply. Transport. This is a card I want to show you. Organize priority transport for any division that is outside of command range, not cut off, hasn't moved, and is further than 3 hexes from the enemy. So going back up to our panzer divisions here, these wouldn't count because they're up front close to the enemy. This card is basically useful for gathering units that have been left behind for whatever reason. So for example, these divisions down here, they're just barely within range, but if we keep pushing towards Minsk, then they might get out of range. See, they're already at the limit. But let's say these red units for the 4th Army move up, and the blue ones, they're close enough they can march behind. But let's say they got stuck there for whatever reason. They ran out of supplies, division got holed up in weather, something like that. So they're left behind, and they're more than distance from the enemy. You can play that card, which costs, I believe, 3 political points, and it will then allow you to basically strategically redeploy the division elsewhere on the map. It'll basically pull it to the HQ. So if I ever played on one of these divisions, and it was legit, next turn, this division would appear on the HQ. So it's a great way of kind of like, if you have units that kind of go off and do their own thing, and they're stuck behind, it's a quick way to pull them over, but it does cost political points, so it's better just to spend the turn, the 4 days, and have them march back into it. It's just something to be aware of. It is an option, but again, you have to justify it, and you have to just think about it, and let me know ahead of time. All right, so now time to go over some of the details for each unit and the armor groups. First things first, I'm just going to give you a glimpse of Finland, just because. Finland's doing pretty well. They're slowly making grounds against the Reds here, just pushing forward. Basically the way the Finnish work, because it's a narrow front here, you basically flank them, hit them all at once, and then repeat. So you basically try and attack from 2 or 3 places at once to secure what you want. That helps because, again, 3 divisions attacking from 1 hex are weaker than 3 divisions attacking from 3 hexes. Like 30% weaker. The bonuses are, 20% technically. It's just the way it works. The game favors flanking attacks in multiple directions. It gives you bonuses for it, so if you're trying to hammer your way through, you actually are going to probably take extra losses. But it works here because the Reds, there's nowhere to maneuver. It's basically trench warfare almost. It's move up, very methodical, eliminating each pocket, moving on. The thing about the Finns, again, see these Bs here? That's as far as they can go. So they're not even going to cut this railroad. They're not going to take Leningrad. They can tie up the Reds, but that's it. All right. I get a drink. Army Group North. Look at all that fuel. You got fuel. And because you're not in the Blitzkrieg formation anymore, you're on sustained offensive for your panzers, that's a good thing because it means you definitely are not going to be burning up as much fuel as you would have before. That allows you to conserve your fuel supplies and keep advancing, and you still get, as you can see here, you still get the bonuses for offensive power. It gives you, I believe, 10% offensive bonus and like negative 5% defensive. So not bad. The one thing to worry about though is your infantry armies are both still on the Blitzkrieg, and that's going to start building up your fatigue. Let's see if I can give you the unit detail here. If I can figure out where it says fatigue, just to show you what I mean. Give me 1 second. I have to... Good Lord, it's hard to find. Well, anyway, I'll let you know because I've been posting the data on fatigue in the updates, just to give you the kind of information about it, about what's going on, and like what units need to watch out for it. Basically, every foot infantry that is on Blitzkrieg, every time it moves or attacks, it starts to build up fatigue. Basically because they're marching so quickly they can't stop to rest. That does build up eventually. It can kind of have a negative effect overall because you'll start to lose your ability to move. Basically, they get tired. So eventually, and this is for all commanders, you'll probably want to start moving your infantry over to sustained assault at some time. You don't have to do it right now because it's still early. We still want to make our infantry advance and take stuff. Something to be aware of in the future. So you're in a good position here. You've got your units on the left. The Reds are stuck here. We don't know what's in your Riga. It says nothing, but I can almost guarantee you there's units back here. Now that you've got some fuel and you're not stuck, your panzer units can actually start advancing. Pretty far, actually. But again, because this is crossing a river here, you can see they can move up to it and attack, or they can keep crossing and like go around the backside. But you can't really move up and take it with these units because it costs too much. Down here, infantry, good moves, good distance, can move up, can keep pushing the Reds back. You're in a pretty good strong position because the Reds only have, looks like, 2 armies against you right now, and they're both kind of broken and retreating. Going down to Army Group Center here, 3rd Panzer Group. Again, everything's within range right here, and you can see the Reds are flowing back. Oh, that's right. This actually applies to both Army Group North and Army Group Center. Both of you guys did have orders that I wasn't able to follow through on because, as I talked about before, either lost fuel or a lack of supplies, enemy presence, or changing positions. For Army Group Center, because your divisions were moving up along this railroad towards Minsk, and there were Red Army divisions all along the side here, that increased the cost greatly for your unit. So you weren't able to even try and attempt to attack Minsk, really, for these units. However, a lot of the units that moved up did have the ability to attack. And they just did. I didn't attack this turn with them because they, the fuel situation, and because I didn't have the orders for it, so I didn't want to launch a major attack without permission, obviously. One or two, there was one attack made here because the unit was so weak and your units were in position and had a lot of extra maneuver, these units especially. That's why these units are a little bit further forward than they were in your orders. It's because they basically eliminated a red division, maybe two, and just moved up because they had a lot of extra AP just sitting around. I definitely, again, would consider possibly changing your position on one or two of your division, or one of your panzer groups. As you can see right here, your Army Group Center has 2 panzer armies compared to Army Group North, and Army Group North has more fuel than you. Now, part of that is because Army Group North didn't really move his panzers last turn because he was resting and refitting, basically. It's just something to be aware of. That if you switch it over from Blitzkrieg to Sustained Assault, you'll burn less fuel. You also won't be able to move as fast because right now, if you look right here, like your 7th Panzer Division, you've got free reign to go wherever you want. I mean, even though this forest will slow you down, these red divisions are nothing. The 9th Army can handle them while the 3rd Panzer Group goes wherever you want it to. And I'll give you a couple unit references for your divisions in here, like the Reich. Down here you can see where the 1st Cavalry can go to, 45th. One thing is you guys kind of sent a lot of units south here on this railroad. I'd consider sending some of these guys back north, especially the Panzer Group units, just so they can stay within HQ range. Let the 4th Army handle the swamp. But yeah, these guys, you can see right here, you got a lot of firepower ready to go to take Minsk. You can take it this turn, no doubt. I'd recommend not just hammering your way through. I would recommend sending like the 3rd Panzer Group or all of these Panzer divisions around the side to flank it, or moving, this hex up to the south of the city and then that way. Basically cut it off and then attack it, so that way you can remove the bonuses, because if you can see right here, they got, a lot of dug-in bonuses. A 200 entrenchment bonus for the garrison, 118 for that motorized division, while the guys in the field only have like 80 or 33, so it's easier to take out these guys. But you're, again, in a strong position to take Minsk, and then I would definitely recommend probably changing your offensive positions after you've taken Minsk, so that way you can relocate this fuel supply depot there. You can rest and refit your panzer groups, because if you can see right here, like the 2nd and 3rd panzer groups, basically the second panzer group's only got 83% of its tanks remaining, and 3rd panzer group's only got 76% of its tanks remaining. Not a bad position, but 4th panzer group, especially down, up here, is kind of taking the brunt of it. But again, it's just something to be aware of. Is you can do it all at once. If you take Minsk, you can then change your offensive position. You can rest and refit your divisions and move up your supply depot all at the same time. So that way, when they're all finished, you don't have to waste time with anything else. It's all done all during the same period. All right, so you're in a good position here, and I'll go down here to Army Group South. Again, this is the same thing. These divisions here are they're moving slow because, as you can see, it's just tough terrain. It costs 100 APs just to go these 3, and that's without the enemy forcing you. And most of the Panzer Group divisions couldn't move because fuel was so low. It's just because you're moving towards the Volga, especially right now, you're not going to have any fuel for a while anyway. So I'd recommend moving your Panzer Group HQ, just down the railroad some, to put these guys in range. It's not too big of a loss right now because you don't have the fuel to use them anyway. You're just waiting for this guy to resupply and refit, so no worries. I'll give you some range on your infantry units, show you here. I would recommend not sending these divisions through the swamp to secure your left flank. The Reds don't have much there, and as you can see, they have 1 motorized brigade. And honestly, I feel like if you send guys out there, the Soviets are more likely to send guys to try and counter them So if you just kind of move around the side of the swamp and come back around the other side of it, you're good. And you can see around here, the swamp just kills movement range. It's very, very slow going. There's lots of rivers, lots of swamps, lots of forests. It's just not easy place to move through. Elsewhere, your infantry units have a lot more of a range for where to get to. And to give you some stuff for the 17th Army here, you can see, again, these units can move, but they don't have a lot of... That's one of the things here is if you look at these units, a lot of them are kind of low on action points. Something to be aware of. You can see these guys here, 100, 100, and then 50. Now, I believe it's because 132nd probably was just deployed, but it's just something to be aware of, is your general range for your fully supplied units is basically, again, 2. 2 maybe to attack, but generally 2. It's either 1 attack or 2 movement. Sometimes you get the 2 in the attack, like this one. Panzers, yeah, I wouldn't move them. I'd keep the fuel. But yeah, your infantry can basically move up to the front line this turn while you're resting and refitting at Lov and getting that set up. The Hungarians, they're doing all right. The Reds, you can see they're kind of putting a lot of guys in the line here, so I would definitely probably move up to expand your front line just to keep a convenient place. Because here's the thing, this unit's exposed, and if the Reds move up here, they'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes around it to attack. The AI will probably take advantage of that. So I would just keep these units moving up here. Be aware of your front line for the 11th Army ones. Again, this 8th Infantry is out of command range, so I would recommend probably moving the 11th Army HQ up 1 or 2, depending on how far these guys move. And that was the other thing, too, for 11th Army, is the moves that you were given, the orders. Basically, because the Red Army was nearby and they had to cross a river, it cost most of their movement. Now that they crossed it, they can start doing the full 2 or 3 hex move range. But it's just something to be aware of. It's just that the rivers kill movement speed. That's why taking bridges intact is so important. But if you lose, if you have to cross a river, it's basically like almost a 2-turn endeavor. You move up to the river, then you cross it, and then you're allowed to move and the turn after. So it takes about 3 turns to really get all the way across the river, and there are a lot of rivers to cross. Last thing is these guys here are kind of cut off, so that's good. 4th Iranian Army is moving up towards Odessa. 11th Army kind of moved up towards it too, and it's poised to blitz up here north of Odessa. In both cases, I would just say cut off Odessa, surround it, and reduce it that way. Yeah, so I'm just giving you some glimpses on what else to move. What else you have? First Armored here is... the world is your oyster. We weren't able to move north of Odessa at the time. I know you wanted to, but the armored division here was faced off against a Soviet division that we hadn't seen. And I actually don't know where the division went. It either moved south into Odessa or it retreated east. But that's the reason why the rail line wasn't fully cut off. Although you can see right here, once it moved away, the zone of control around the division activated, and it secured all these divisions around it, or all these hexes around it. So that's pretty good. And yeah, so there's these divisions that were back behind, were slow at the time. Now that you finally secured it and the Reds have just been retreating like mad, yeah, you're ready to go. You're ready to secure it all. All right, and let's see if there's anything else going on here. Rail infrastructure, again, if you do the stuff that really appeases to the rail guy, it'll appeal to General Gurkha. Poor cooperation. This is actually probably a big one because it has to deal with the Luftwaffe, and Hermann does not like us. Anything to help them, and also in this case, here's the again when it comes to balancing relationships, Goering doesn't like us right now. Gurkha does. It might be in everyone's best interests to make a concession to Goering and kind of side with the Luftwaffe, because we can afford to take a few hits with Gurkha and kind of upset him a little bit because he likes us so much. That might get Goering back on our side. And it's good to have commanders on your side. You definitely don't want powerful men back in Berlin not liking you, or not liking me specifically. Commission study. This is an important one too, because this is about winter preparations. And I posted all the stuff here about things you need to do. Basically, the way the winter stuff works is when winter happens, it happens near the end, right when the Soviets are starting to make their counterattack, and it basically freezes units in place. That's bad. And so you basically, if you haven't secured your objectives by winter, and you haven't been able to get prepared for winter, the Soviets can really make your day miserable. And your tanks become useless, and you have to basically do it with infantry alone. Heroic Deed, again, this is just a bonus for a division. It's a small cost, 1 PP. It's generally worth it. I almost always did it. Now, the last thing is going to be these relocate forward supply bases for north and center. And then this train one, it is listed. But in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to actually list the relocate FSBs in the actual decision polls, because a lot of them just show up every single turn, and they usually have a lot of options. See, this one has 5 alone. It maxes out at 5. The thing about the polls on Armchair General forums is you can only have 25 options on the poll. That means that if I were to include, relocate the FSB for Army Group Center every time, that's every time it takes up 5 spots. So I'm just going to list the options, and since it's always the same price anyway, I'll just list them and let you type it out if you want to do it. So these ongoing ones will be like that. Eisenbahntruppe, this one will, it's actually listed out, and these special ones will do it. But when it comes to relocating forward supply bases and air bases, I'm just going to list it there, like in text, and just give you the options. So that way it frees up space for the other decisions. And that way you don't get harassed every time. Because these recurring ones are going to happen a lot. They happen every turn, basically to allow you to have the chance to do it. So it's just something to be considered. All right, I think that is just about everything. All the rest of these units here are in a good position, and yeah, we're just waiting to keep moving forward. Keep an eye on your supply levels, your fuel especially. It's a good thing Army Group South is now moving its fuel supply to Lvov. That's going to really help you out, because as you can see from this map here, remember, you can only really move 10 fuel, like 10 range, before you start breaking down your trucks. Lvov gives you a much greater advance towards getting toward Kiev or Proskuro or Vinistra, whatever you're going to move towards next. So it's good to kind of take the turn to rest and relax. I would also, again, consider playing a rest and refit on an army group, especially for Army Group South. Play it for your 1st Panzer Group so you can rest all your tanks, you can get everything back and running, since, you're not moving anywhere right now anyway. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for putting up with all my technical difficulties. It seems like everything that wanted to go wrong could go wrong this year. So I look forward to seeing you at the next turn.